First of all, thank you warmly for coming. And I would like to say that I found male have a don't call it pedophilia, I call it pedo crime. I would like to say before I go on, I'd already announced what it's all about. What it was, it's a bit difficult to look at you and at the same time read my slides here. I'm planning to speak about political, economic, political crime, because crime has been mentioned often enough. Often it's about much. It's always pointed out. Pedo crimes, children's own families, and those that are come to light, the others come to light. And so I would this that most of the child abuse cases happen within the family. The political, economic, and geopolitical pedo crime, a complex interaction of power, money, and systematic abuse of children. First, political crime. This is mostly about abuse of politicians or use a abusive or in order to increase one's by influential people, expose them to position yourself better for your own benefit. Those two. Of course, we have that in the context of institutions with politics, business, and authorities. Work of institutions, churches, all sorts of things. Also, foster parents, not all the parents, children without them, many more but there are some parents who not children also make them eligible for abuse. We know this from reports of cases, namely Operation Sugar, or help the makers of these films in making those films, and The Sound of Freedom might be even more well known. So we have the perpetrators on the one side and the victims on the other side. Perpetrators are nurses, clerics, politicians, judges, securities, trainers, entrepreneurs, and probably a host of others. Are children in nursing homes, foster children, children, and other institutions, as well as ministries. Political is a
I will actually mention use cases a little later, examples.
drugs, weapon, and human trafficking prevail, organized crime, benefiting from crises and war. We know in the Ukraine, for instance, we know that many kids are kidnapped from the Ukraine. In the UK, for instance, on Telegram, there was a report published half an hour ago by me. It's called The Children as a Commodity. So you can download it and open it with all of the evidence. So there are sources as evidence. This is not just a statement. I listed all of the sources. We saw that organized crime also prevails at the UN in areas of crisis where they enter as helpers, and their children are sold, mistreated, and abused. Uwe already said that in the Ukraine, organ trafficking and child abuse are actually happening on a daily basis. And organized crime as the deep state in cooperation with secret services. And I will provide you with examples for this a little later. This is a parallel development between secret services and organized crime. It is about power and money. There's the gray zone because the state leverages criminal structures. I come to the perpetrators again. Secret services, state protection, politicians, police forces, and the financial elite are those who benefit from this. Of course, there are also parents. There are fathers and foster fathers that abuse children, their children. I'm not denying this, but there's far more than this. They also parents selling their kids. We all know that, of course. Organized crime is often immune politically, so they're often protected by the state if this is within the national interest. My voice is failing me. It's not a nice topic. Anyway, right now, we have an exponential cross-border growth of organized crime, pedocrime. And this is the source of the Federal Ministry of Interior Affairs. And everybody can look at this. We have complaints by investigators themselves who say they have been instructed to cover this up. They are actually hindered in investigations and persecution. They omit investigations because they have been instructed to do so, or because they're involved themselves. Yeah, and they sue people who uncover such cases, menace people who uncover such cases. This is also the case in the case of Dorothea Thuin, the doctor that I will talk about a little later. I'm sorry for my coughing. The investigators are in part perpetrators themselves, and from the case in Lütke, we know they also destroy evidence because 150 documents, containing evidence, disappeared from the files, and there's more evidence that simply vanished.
So we have the following finding. Investigators are removed from touchy cases. They are oppressed. They are removed from cases. They're threatened. Oh, for example, sorry about this. My voice is unfortunately failing. I can't really speak then. In the case of the tax investigators in Hesse, they didn't deal with child abuse, but with money laundering. They were traumatized, and it was a pretty drastic case. There were other cases as well that I'll get back to later. So I hope I got my voice back now. I have a first case here, directly from Bavaria. One child tells his father in summer 2023 about the sexual trespasses by the Russian Jewish grandfather. And we reported about this on Telegram. We reported about this case. Now, because I showed it, I have been requested twice by the head public prosecutor to correct my statement. We've done that twice already, so I have to do it again. So the father reported this to the police. He made a report on the hazard to the child's health. The child is growing up with a mother and speaks mostly Russian. The child is 4 years old only, and it has a memory of a few weeks, maybe a few months. That's the rule. That is normal. The child was heard only 3 months later by the police, 3 months after the event. The father brought pressure to bear. He wanted to have a victim lawyer. He submitted requests to the court that were rejected. The child was heard way too late. And when way later, even more months later, a psychologist was called in, she said the child couldn't make a statement because it hadn't been taken into consideration that the child speaks Russian, so no interpreter was available. So everything was done here in order to avoid the prosecution of the sexual abuse. My personal opinion in this context is that this Russian Jewish grandfather somehow either was a covert agent or something else, so he was protected. The child's father is a public official himself, and he's mobbed massively. I can say that much. Continuation of the way the grandfather, grandfather was still allowed to see the child. The mother refused to make a statement against her father. She could have, but she refused to that. She also refused to have the child examined to protect her father. The mother was present when the police interviewed the child. So that the child wouldn't. The police want the child to say, but what the mother wanted to say. I think that's obvious. The father was deprived of his custody by the local court of Regensburg. The father wanted to protect his child, and that is what I consistently see with mothers too, who say, I have a suspicion here, my child told me such and such a thing. And then they say, oh, the child, the mother has interviewed the child, so she manipulated it. So we have to take the child away from the mother, and it goes to the presumptive perpetrator. I've seen so many cases where that exact pattern has been followed. And of course, it's not exposed because they're not public proceedings. This happens behind the scenes and nobody reports on it. But I have the files, I see it all the time, and I'm really only appalled by it. For instance, at Climate TV, under Protect Children, Alexa Inquirers, I have cases there that are described with the mothers. And I said it already, that happens all the time. I'd also said already that the expert was commissioned too late, and the recordings, the sound recordings that the father made, what are these cameras that policemen have, body cams? He recorded this with a body cam because he knew that something that he might be that he did it incorrectly. But even these sound recordings were covered up by a court. We don't know if the public prosecutor has access to them yet. The father had to see a doctor because the court, a Ms. Rock and a Ms. P. Weigel-Krechtel, requested psychiatric examination of the father because he was looking for help with AxionResist, with whom he has a weird attitude. So if you look for help, you have to be psychologically damaged. So the father had requested a contact ban for the grandfather, but that was rejected. The child is still exposed to the presumptive perpetrator. The public prosecutor of Regensburg is protecting the public prosecutor instead of the child. So was a press conference where the public prosecutor, Tyson is his name, was a court case where he only worked as a spokesperson for the public prosecutor working on this case, but he wasn't the one who actually worked on the case, but that couldn't be gleaned from the article that was published. And again, this happened again, but with this case, he simply refused to investigate early on. And if a child is exposed to an interview after such a long time as he is planning to do now, I can tell you nothing much will come out of it. By now, the child would have been manipulated by the mother, the grandfather, possibly by the grandmother as well. And also, the memory span of that child is elapsed by now. So it's all nonsense. So I have to modify our by the 19th of December now, and I'll ask the public prosecutor in Regensburg, what do you do in order to protect the child rather than only the public prosecutor? So what's happening there? Here's the source on the homepage of AxionResist. We have the case there. You can look at all the details. Now I have case 2, a really serious example where there is a mixing of the pediatric physician and to lawyer Rainer Füllmich. I'll get back to that later on. A 4-year-old boy in 2016 told his mother about oral and anal sex by the father. The parents were separated. A pediatric doctor, not Ms. School this time, had already voiced the suspicion that there'd been sexual abuse of the child and took pictures. Physicians who examined her at the Charité Hospital had the suspicion, voiced the suspicion that there was a continuous sexual abuse of the boy. They wanted to have the boy therapy treated. The father rejected the therapy. It's always the same pattern. The parents don't want the children to be treated. In October 2010, there was an interview by the state FBI, State Bureau of Investigation. I think it was in 2014 that made a mistake here. The investigations were suspended due to a lack of evidence because it might have been the 4-year-old's imagination or influencing by the mother. I can say I'm only taking these 2 cases as an example, this mother recorded everything appropriately, and the records certainly do not indicate any manipulation by the mother. Not at all. So what can I say? You're simply shocked, and I have to correct myself. In the first example, the grandmother was of Russian Jewish descent. The grandfather was only of Russian descent. So just to correct this, can you ask questions later on, please? So I spoke about the audio files already. The child started having nightmares. The kindergarten suddenly noticed behavioral deviation in the child's sexualized behavior and incontinence. Behavior that was not age appropriate, and the child was fixated on sexual body parts. The child started asking adults to engage in sexual activities with it. Even if the adult rejects it, the child wants to continue, so the adults really have to insist for the child to stop. In the hospital, a Protestant hospital in Berlin, a therapy is recommended, and the father rejects it, and he gets custody in 2015. The child goes straight from the clinic to the father. That's what the court decided. The mother loses custody. The mother, up until 2016, had for a whole year didn't have any contact with the child anymore. The behavioral deviation have been aggravated. The child is developing massive development disorders that hadn't been noticed previously, and that is all put down to the mother. And I keep seeing that all the time. A criminal expert opinion confirm the sexual abuse, and it's disregarded because it is partisan. It's unbelievable. In 2017, the child's office confirms autoaggressive and exhibitionist behavior in the child. That it confirms that it damages, hurts itself, and that it puts down its hands, exposing its genitals, and says, "I have to eat shit," etc. The manager of the office of the child office in Neukölln confirms in 2018 that the child has sexualized behavior, and the mother hasn't had much interaction with the child for years. She got expert opinions, she hired private eyes, etc. The public prosecutor is not impressed at all by this, not in the least. And I got a criminal file on this case yesterday. The mother agreed to this, and the proceedings were discontinued again, pointing out that nothing was found. And there's not a single verification to be seen there. There's so many criminal reports there by child protection organizations, and the public prosecutor did nothing. There's nothing about that in the entire file. And today, just earlier, I got an email that a file from this year, from 2018, has been, from 2018 has already been destroyed. There's an obligation to keep it for at least 5 to 10 years. The child is so disturbed by now that it says it wants to die. Nobody cares. No file indicates any indication of the mother being responsible for threatening the child's welfare. The youth authorities have confirmed even that there has never been such a threat by the mother. And now you should take a close look at this. This is a chat between the child's father and the mother when she still was allowed to talk to the child. I won't even use some of the words, the language used here. But what you can see here is that the father is willing to use violence. He says, I'll kill him. I'll kill him before you get him. He says this, so he threatens the mother with killing the child before she gets him back. And no public prosecutor, no youth office, no judge intervenes. This is incredible what you can see here. However, I've never seen this in such a crass manner in any other case. What I had seen, however, and I've spoken about it again and again and again, and this is why I point out to the other symposia where I explained it in great detail. There's a case that makes it quite clear that a mother's signature was falsified, and without any risk to the health, to the welfare of the child being shown. The 3-year-old child was taken from our household and given to an Italian couple who have a very dubious reputation. I happen to know because I'm from the same village they're from. And this child, when it was supposed to start to be schooled, it had such panic attacks that it hid under the table in school and at the same time used words that I wouldn't want to use here. That's not only fecal language, it's more about language that would be used in the context of prostitution, pimp language, basically. So this mother has 3 children. She never got those children back, even though the Office of the Child Welfare must have falsified the mother's signature. And the public prosecutor discontinued the case because they argued we cannot find the perpetrator, even though it happened in an office, a child welfare office with 6 to 8 staff members. I keep retelling this case because it so shocked me. And this woman was supposed to make a statement. And I submitted a criminal case more than 7 years ago. I have the 6th judge by now. It's still not finished. They are procrastinating, and this mother was afraid of making a statement because she was afraid of losing the other children as well. That's how crazy it is. And now the case was postponed again. Now let me get back to the case again. The mother in the second case has requested information about data storage, and what she gets is this information here. And please remember the name by a Schmelter, the member of a regional Bureau of Investigation staff. And this is interesting because he's also involved in the Filmish case. And I highlighted in yellow here, the mother is informed for the first time that there was a NECMEC information from the US. And she asked, like, what happened there? And there is no proof of activity there. They never looked into it, what happened there. But it is in the investigative file. It's about her child, obviously, who who was sold for child pornography with homosexual men on the internet. I have to keep reading. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. That's what it stands for. NCMEC. They submitted a report on child pornography, and I think that was back in 2021. An inquiry with the police by me showed that the reference of a boy trafficked in the gay scene was reported from the US to Berlin. This figure, 21st of December 2016, or 21/12/16, could be the time of the criminal acts, and we can expect that this was in 2021. And I have the name notification out there. So that's the second page of this page that I just called up earlier. The Green Sync research hit was back in 2021. And now what's interesting is that the mother got made another inquiry under the Freedom of Information Act, Information Disclosure Act. And you can see that there's all sorts of reference codes here. And she was still listed as the legal custody holder for her child. She has all sorts of reference codes, which refer to the retention of the file by 2060. She never got them. They're under cover. So if files about a child are kept up until 2060, but they're secret, then you kind of wonder, who are we protecting here? So just so you see it, that's why I showed it here. Well, as I before, there is no activity reports with the police. She inquired with the police, and they said, well, this disappeared from the file. And now there's a well-known person that comes into play here. That is child protector Carsten Stahl. Carsten Stahl says himself that he used to go to the gym with the suspected perp. But the mother said that he was in her home, talked with the father as a friend, that they know each other since childhood. And Carsten Stahl will sue anyone who claims that he's friends with the father. So he sued the mother. He is supposed not to be able to say that he's friends with the father. At the same time, he keeps saying on the internet that the child has never been abused, that she's only denigrating him. So he's taking the side of the father, who's not supposed to be a friend. And I looked at all this correspondence and I saved it just in case. So he not only threatened the mother with lawsuits, but also vis-a-vis Hans Fassbender, he threatened a lawsuit if he doesn't disclose information, but also vis-a-vis a former MP, a former politician of the AfD party, who supports the mother, and she said that she was being threatened, and it was claimed that that was by the mother, but she's a very slight person, a petite person, and she doesn't really want to go too public because she is afraid of her life. And Mr. Stahl there is really hitting it big time to defend the father. So when Mr. Stahl sued and this lady, she suddenly started talking, making statements against the mother. And she said that the mother is psychologically damaged, and I will show a letter where the the Child Welfare Authority denies having made such a statement. And she just held a letter up, but it was shown in such a way that it couldn't be read on screen. Then Carsten Stahl sued the mother via the court lawyer Marcel Templin, and I was thinking I had Schmelzer already here in this case because I did the file analysis for Mr. Fulmich as well. Now I have Marcel Templin as well. That's kind of fishy. What else is coming down the line? The mother has won the case. And they said, like, what does this Stahl want? What does he want the mother to refrain from? So they try to ruin the mother. She is a nursing manager at a hospital in Berlin, and she's to be financially led, so she can't afford legal counsel anymore. And so we, i.e., the lawyer Müller and myself, offered to work pro bono for her, and lawyer Müller took on the case pro bono because Stahl does everything in order to bleed, to drain her financially. And if she fights for a child in court, I can tell you she won't even get the legal aid. I have the complaint by Stahl against the mother, and you can see lawyer Marcel Templin here. I'm showing it. So I'm not talking about something. So I have it again here. That's Ms. Sercher, the former MP by AfD. She was sued as well for slander. So he sues her, and suddenly she turns around and she attacks her mother together with Stahl. So suddenly she I call it identification with the aggressor. There's another word for it, the Stockholm syndrome. So that's probably better known. Okay. Then it really starts. A party, a fellow of Martin Stahl, who was in AfD with Martin Luther, he demands, as an MP, the investigation file of the supposed perpetrator, i.e. the boy's father. This is the request. He said, please, with reference to Article 45, to get file access. So Martin Luther got the file. As I said, he's friends with Stahl, who at least knows the father of the child very well, even if he doesn't want to be friends with him, even though he takes his side so strongly. So you wonder, why has he requested this file, and how did he know that there is this court case in the first place? The mother had contacted Marcel Luther 2 years later because he had also publicly spoken out against child abuse cases, just like Mr. Stahl. He would help them, and Martin Luther sent an email, and I didn't have it now. I didn't include it. There was a lot of work involved. He answered to the mother. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to look into your case. I'm so swamped with work.
Here you can see that the public prosecution had no thoughts about handing over the files to Mr. Luther. They decided that he should have the file, so he had the file. And with the deadline of 3 months. Well, then, and now it's getting really interesting. His mother, again, requested information according to the Freedom of Information Act and receives a huge list of record files, all featuring her name. And one of the records said that her name was featured in the committee investigation of the NSU. And for the English-speaking listeners, I have to explain a little now what the NSU is. The National Socialist Underground, NSU, is referred to as a terror group which committed several murders, but was suppressed in the public at large is the fact that on the laptop of Mrs. Zschäpe, one of the NSU members, masses of child pornography were found. And a witness said that she went shopping with a little child that referred to her as Mama, and that that in the caravan that they lived in, kids' clothing, toys, and shoes, and another laptop with child pornography were found. The LKA-5, Mr. Schmelter in Berlin, was in charge for state protection for the NSU, for the National Socialist Underground. I found this out because a politician of the Pirates Party asked that and were told that over 70 officers of the LKA 70 work as protecting the state and were also in part involved in this committee for the NSU. This file number in 2016 was deleted after this request for information. And the reason given was, well, NSU. And now I come to Dr. Dorothea Thuhl. This pediatrician, Dr. Dorothea Thuhl, in this child abuse case that I'm reporting, actually drew up an expert opinion. I'm very critical about expert opinions. Only rarely I find high-quality expert opinions, but I must admit this expert opinion was outstanding. Although she only had evidence photography and documents and files to draw up her opinion. She, in this particular case, diagnosed severe, chronic, and ongoing abuse of this boy. Dorothea Thuhl was beaten up in front of her door of the flat. She was menaced. She was admitted to a psychiatric ward, and she was actually also detained. And she was actually taken into investigative custody for defaming judges. She had defamed judges and named judges. I've not seen a single video that would verify this statement. And the State Protection Officer Schmelter is also involved in the proceedings with Dr. Rainer Füllmich. And the lawyers Marcel Templin, Justus Hoffmann, and Tonia Fischer also filed charging in the case of Dr. Füllmich. Rainer Füllmich said in various videos, and I will talk about this a little later, that he will start fighting politically, economic, and geopolitical pedocrime because enough had been said about COVID, and this is why he wanted to change the topic and fight pedocrime. He actually looked after this topic. All the investigations against him were already going on since 21. The major public prosecutor in Berlin, the charge was turned down. And a Göttingen-based public prosecutor also turned down, did not accept the charge for infidelity. And she said, this is not even an initial suspicion. And you know what happened next? Like through a miracle, the Hafenanwälte came with their charge in October 22. And finally, from Hanover, there was a new public prosecutor called John, and he was appointed to the case. And he raised the charge against Rainer Füllmich. And the illegal kidnapping of Rainer Füllmich in Mexico were initiated by this new public prosecutor. Now I have to comment on this. It may belong to each other or not, but it shocked me. I had an adrenaline rush. I'm not allowed to show the photograph for copyright reasons, but there is a photograph of the father with his little boy on the knee, and in handwriting it says, "This is my little Jon." The Aaron Andreas. He's not called John. And I thought, this is the third name. This is the third name cropping up now. I hope, I don't know, but this could also be a reference to something else. But it really shocked me. Now I would like to ask you to roll Rainer Füllmich's video. It's just short sequences. So I represented survivors of child abuse 20 years ago. For me, this is part of the Great Reset. There are only two things you have to really stick together, because it's the control of the remaining population and money, bribery, and the other thing, which is more widespread than most of us, including myself, thought, is pedophilia. And this is what we want to have a closer look at. And Kirsty has direct experience with the powers that we're faced with. I think that this will be the last straw to break the donkey's back. They can actually get out and saying, well, yes, we've made a few mistakes with the vaccines. Maybe we've gone a little too far with the measures, the lockdowns, and so on and so forth. We're sorry. We destroyed all of the SMEs. Oh, sorry, for the benefit of Amazon and a few others. Well, this can happen, but this problem cannot be ignored. As I already said, I represented over 20 years ago survivors of child abuse, including ritual child abuse. I back then thought that this was isolated cases, but in the meantime, as a result of what I have learned through the COVID pandemic and the interviews I had with over 450 experts from all segments of society, including physicians, social scientists, environmental politicians, I arrived at the conclusion that this is one of the most important, if not the most important aspects of this great reset. The pendant to the Epstein Island was the Michigan Island. And I was taken there when I was 9 years old. And I was actually made available for sexual abuse. Actually, was actually involved in this new world order. And this also corresponds to what I learned over the years when I actually represented these victims. You're reporting that all of the politicians, even back in the 80s and even before that, were all compromised. And you know what? The women that I talked to over 20 years ago told me the same stories about German politicians. I won't give away any names here, but there are some politicians of the Green Party, the Social Democrats as well, who actually participate in these meetings. And we now hear that there's strange things happening there. Diesen Treffen, von denen man jetzt weiß, dass da seltsame Dinge passiert sind, ne? Was haben Sie gesagt? In Nordkalifornien beispielsweise. You mentioned this place in North California, Bohemian Grove. Yes, one of my heroes, the only hero I probably ever thought was a good politician, was Chancellor Federal was Schmidt. Kann man daran teilnehmen, um überhaupt zu wissen, was da passiert? I know that we're actually approaching a turn of the tide here. When you look at what's happening here, how they expose themselves. A few years ago, we had this celebration to open the San Gottardo Tunnel, then the Olympic Games in London, which kicked off with one of those strange satanic ceremonies, and now there are even operas where you celebrate food, eating children. These guys have just lost control, completely lost control. I think they are in panic mode and they're standing with their backs against the wall. If we continue uncovering the things that are exposing this, well, you have to be very lucky to come across a judge who, despite all of the corruption and the obstacles, is prepared to actually maintain the rule of law. This is the reason why Dexter and all of the others inside the group of international lawyers for over half a year now are working with the Maui, because we believe that on the basis of their Tikanga law, on their testimony, that is closely linked to spirituality, can really be sorted out in true proceedings, legal proceedings, and they will expose everything. This is probably taking place in parallel with the awakening, this general awakening based on our work, so that the public at large understands what we're faced with. But that's a different story. It is the people who will stop it. It is not the courts. The courts will actually sort it all out afterwards. We will actually bring down all of these companies, and all of the people responsible will be jailed, unless spirituality will do it by itself, and it will do so. This will be very important and open many people's eyes. It has confirmed what I've thought for a long, long time. The most important aspect is that this is not about any rumors, but that you have experienced it all by yourself. You are lucid and you're a perfect witness.
Welcome to another session of the International Crimes Investigative Committee. Today we will take a closer look at the United Nations, which many people are aware of, that they are supposed to become the one world government as proclaimed in the Great Reset. So what is the United Nations about, and who do we talk to? Well, our interview partner is a former high-ranking member of the United Nations. His name is Călin Georgescu.
The problem is that these oligarchs, all of them, are related with the system of the pedophilia one. Because we know that there are more than 8 million children per year which they disappear. 8 million does mean the entire population of Austria.
And yes, if we do not help to free Rainer Füllmich and obtain the right, because they are really kept from, of course, they want to silence Rainer Füllmich. I had a very close look at everything. I talked to innumerable lawyers, financial, inland revenue officers, and I talked to a legal office for tax law and business law. The whole charge, because of infidelity, is a farce. It's non-existent. So for over 2 years, there has not been a single meeting of the court because a judge fell ill. I know I've talked for very long, but there's one thing I have to tell you. I wanted to provide you with evidence. Evidence for the fact that police forces are also involved in pedocrime. Police officer charged with child pornography. This was a little police officer, but let me show you this. We had the Edati case. He actually chaired the NSU investigation committee, and he actually made some allegiance that there was something even bigger behind this. The people, the trio in NSU had very close contacts with Tino Brandt of the Heimatschutz, which is apart from pimping and abuse, was charged guilty and sentenced guilty in 156 cases. The NSU actually helped him and supported him. The main business of the NSU was child trafficking. And while Edati was actually show-trialed in the media because he had published some posing images, boys with naked breasts, but fully dressed otherwise, he was really, he received letters that people wanted to murder him. During the same time, BKA, so an employee of the National Office of Criminal Investigation, was revealed to had child pornography on his computer. The police officers who are actually tasked with revealing these cases only reveal the cases, is often found, that are not so spectacular, but cover up everything where the elite is involved. And this is what I wanted to show you to conclude. The Frankfurter Allgemeine newspaper shows the following headline: softly discharged of pornography officer. The file that actually reveals Edati's purchase of images also lists one BKA officer, a criminal director. to avoid a scandal, he was removed from the office silently. These people are in key positions. Most of them know each other. All of the pedo crime perpetrators know each other, and they make sure that certain perpetrators cannot be uncovered or revealed. Let me also comment on Max Eder, who was imprisoned. He clearly said he talked to a survivor of most severe cases of sexual abuse, and he said that he would actually investigate the case further and provide more evidence, but he was detained far too fast. He was put in investigative custody. Johanna Findeisen met him there because they wanted to help after the floods in the Ahr Valley. And she committed a huge crime because during a memorial day of a plane crash where many Russian kids were killed and Russian and Ukrainian kids. She actually attended, and as a Basis Party representative, she shook the hand of the Russian ambassador. Sorry, the Russian ambassador, and handed over a letter to him written by the dependents of Julian Assange, who was still imprisoned at that time because she had promised to do so. And this is the reason why she is in investigative custody under incredible, unacceptable conditions. So he has not only unveiled crimes of war, but also many cases of sexual abuse and of child abuse. I have emails of Mrs. Clinton that specifies the costs of getting these children out, the transport costs, and I don't want to drill any deeper because my husband, the moderator, is already very nervous. Let me nevertheless briefly touch upon Marc Dutroux from Belgium and the 27 silenced or dead witnesses. Klar TV has now published a very good documentation, which unfortunately I haven't seen yet because I don't have the time to. And this documentation says that 30 witnesses are dead by now. One of the accomplices of Dutroux said the following: Michel New, he's quite known. Each one owns a dossier of each other to be able to use it to exert pressure if needed. So they control each other, and this is why everything is covered up and nobody is actually unveiled. One of the Belgian witnesses, alleged perpetrator is Alain Derignon. He used to be the vice president of the European Commission and the chairman and later honorary president of the Bilderberg Conference. Another alleged identified perpetrator is Melchior Batilet. As a Belgian Minister of Justice, blocked the investigation of terror attacks, and in 1992 actually released Marc Dutroux before he served his sentence, who in 1989 had already been charged with 19 years. Later, the same man became judge and the public prosecutor at the European Court of Justice. So it was the same person, an alleged perpetrator. Later, Willy Klaas was actually identified by a Belgian witness as a co-perpetrator, and these personalities have never been charged. so far. And these are just some examples regarding this Dutroux case. And let me say one last thing. And Hajo Funke, the political scientist who actually served as an expert in the NSU investigation committee, on the 15th of 12, 2017, said the following, and I quote, "As was shown, National Socialist and conmen witnessed how young boys were actually delivered to gray-haired politicians." So children as a commodity. Funke expects this to be organized crime. At least one colleague of his, of the killed Michel Kiesewetter, are members of Ku Klux Klan. In the NSU case, there were 7 mysterious deaths. And in the case I just presented, the NSU case also featured Schmelter, Templin, and this image with my little Jon. So I want to leave it at that. Would like to thank each and every one, because we still have one very, very important speaker who will join us online in a minute. Yeah, others were already mentioned. Thanks very much for your attention. And of course, for your donations or your preparedness to donate.